Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
Intane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. It's just me today. Tane cannot join us today. He's away doing some other cool things, as he always is. And as always, like to share something that I put into my basket of knowledge before we introduce our guest. Over the last week, the one thing that I put into my basket of knowledge was the phrase "choose your hard." Every day in life we have options, we have opportunities, we have things that come to us, and every day we have a choice of choosing your hard. And that can be as simple as when the alarm goes, you can choose to stay in bed or you can choose to get up. You can choose to go to the gym, you can choose to eat healthy, not healthy. Every day you choose your heart, and everything that you do has an impact. And the reason I thought about that is because when we think about life and choices, we all have choices in life every single day, and every choice that we make, one choice is going to be easier than the other choice depending on your value system. So as I reflected about that, I have put up a little poster in my office that just says "Choose your heart," just to remind me that hey, whichever way we go, there's going to be an impact. So it just depends on whether you want to impact the world, your health, whichever way it is, positive or negative, you have that choice there. So that's my little beauty to the world today. But it's not about me today. As always, we are really privileged and very lucky to have guests on our podcast that we think we're amazing. We know that everyone's amazing. We know everyone's got a story to tell. We wish we could interview everybody, but hey, we have a job to go to, and my boss would not be happy if I did that there. So we're not going to do that there. But instead, we're going to find some people that have some time dedicated to share their story. And today's guest is someone that we have been wanting to get on the podcast for a while. And it's because someone that those of you that listen to us very often, you know that I use LinkedIn as my playground, and I followed this person for a while because I saw the mahi that they do, and it's really inspirational, really aspirational, but also really impactful in what they do. It's someone that I think we should watch, not because of what they're doing, but the impact that they're going to have in the world as you'll figure it out and learn as in today's episode. It is my privilege, my honor, and my pleasure to invite Aditi to Boston Knowledge. Welcome, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Kilda. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. Aditi, for people who know nothing about you, who are you today on the 2nd of June?
Who am I today on the 2nd of June? On the 2nd of June today, I am half a founder and half a daughter. So it's a public holiday here in case we have any overseas listeners. And I am trying as a founder to figure out what that means for me. Like I didn't realize it was one till Friday because when you run your own startup, what's a weekday? What's a weekend? But I'm now kind of more than a year into my journey, and I've learned that in order to do this in the best way, I need to prioritize all the things that are important to me. So today I am half a founder, half a daughter, trying to spend time with people that are important to her and take care of them. But on the whole, I am a founder, so I have a company called Ads on Pads, where we are trying to make period products free for everyone in the community, and we do that powered by ads. So essentially, ad space on the packaging of period products helps us give those away for free, and create period equity in the community and fight period poverty as well.
I love the way you started this off because, as you said before, as a founder, what is a weekday? What is a
Mm.
weekend? It all just merges into one. And every founder that we've had on has always said that, hey, there's no such thing as working too hard, and balance is just if you want your thing to succeed, you've got to go gung ho. But also, as you said, you've also got to remember the people in your life that are important to you. Your family, your final people that are important to you. So I love the way you phrase that at the start there. And you speak about being a founder, but if we go back a little bit, this is where you are today. If we spoke to Aditi at year 13 and said to Aditi at year 13, hey, in 2025, you are going to be a founder of an amazing initiative, what would you have said to us at that time?
I think two veins of thought, right? Like in a weird way, she wouldn't have been surprised. I think I've grown up quite privileged in that sense, and I'm so grateful for that in the sense that I grew up in a business family. So it was always expected of me to have my own business at some point. You know, my parents are both business people, their parents were business people. So I carried that privilege and I knew that at some point I would do something of my own. So being a founder wasn't a shock for me. On the same vein, I think some part of me was like, no, I'm going to be a corporate lawyer. In the way that sometimes like we get so stuck in our thought process in when we are at that age. And I think I was always good at speaking. I was good at making a critical or logical argument. And I thought, okay, well, what's the best path for that? What's hard? It's law. So I'm going to be a lawyer and I'll just do that at uni. And that's the path I'll end up on. But yeah, obviously things happened a little bit differently. I'm not a lawyer, spoiler. Um, so yeah, things moved on. But I don't think I would have been surprised, which is really nice to say. And I hope that more women grow up that way, feeling not surprised that like, oh, like, yeah, if I want to be the CEO of something, I can be the CEO of something. That's not weird.
I like that because you spoke about the impact that your family has around you, and I think there's a saying that says proximity is power, and the proximity is your family, and they're in that same space there. It can either be it can either be forward motion or backward motion depending on your family values. And I say that because a lot of work that I used to do before, I would be in communities where some families don't believe in education, so going to university is not something that people think about. So first in family as well, pretty awesome. So it's people breaking the cycle there. And then conversely, you have people like yourself and other people that have family that are in that space that they go, hey, this is something that's just in your DNA because of just the way the world is. So it's really beautiful for you to just to hear them and say this is it. But hey, we're all rebels. We all go, nah, this is this is what we want to do. It's a bit like myself. My I grew up in a family where my parents are both in the medical profession, in different kinds of profession, and I was like, nah, I'm never going to go in that space. They never. I'm not going to do. I did my first degree in computer science, and then my master's, my PhD was in the health sector, and I was like, how on earth did I end up getting in the health sector, which is what I wanted to avoid. So it's pretty crazy how that happens. And and as you started your journey, you started studying law, I guess. When did things start shifting for you to go actually law, cool, but not really my jam?
I mean, a couple of things happened. So I started at the University of Auckland, and I kind of started with a commerce and a law degree, a conjoint. So I was always like up until that point, academic came really easily to me. Like I'd never had to try to study. They just kind of happened and they worked out quite well. And then it got to university where you kind of can't just phone it in. You kind of can't just like wait till the last minute and hope you know everything because the stuff you're learning is completely new and it is often like opinion based. And so I think after the first year, I actually didn't get into law school. So it took me another year to get in, by which point I realized I actually just didn't like it that much. Like I couldn't, the idea of me sitting there every day, doing the reading, doing the research, looking at the paperwork, it's like, I hate this. But conversely, when I look at things in my business degree, like the degree aside, right? Like, because there's only so much you can learn in a classroom. The things, the conversations I'm having with the people, the networks we're building, that I was excited about and I felt really passionate about. And I think that very quickly made me realize that I was doing maybe a law degree out of this like this notion that I should because everyone around me was like a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. So I was like, well, I have to, without feeling that pressure and realizing that actually, as great as this path is, it doesn't feel right for me. And I'm forcing myself through it. Whereas like the natural path of a business is so exciting. I'd done by that point, I'd done young enterprise at school, which to date is one of my best memories at school. I'd done an accelerator program in Wellington off the back of high school. And all of those things were the things I kept going back to, the things I was excited about. Um, and so eventually I dropped that law degree quite quickly as well.
And that's a big moment because as you said before, people around you are doing those professions, and for you to have that active decision to go, hey, I need to drop this year because so many times people are going, oh, but what if I need to do this year? So it's really beautiful that you had that, you followed your passion. There's this interesting thing that I see in schools where people say follow your passion, and some of them go like, oh, but your passion is not going to get you a job. But if it's really your passion, it's gonna come out anyway in some stage. And sometimes for some people that don't allow themselves to believe in that passion comes up when they're in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s because they realize, oh damn, what have I been doing all my life? It's not okay. So it's really beautiful that you were able to, have the courage to do that there. And when I was doing my reading about you, I noticed that one of the things that you did when you were at the University of Auckland, you were the women's welfare officer. Is that correct? And was that when things started resonating for you about where you might sort of veer into in your future, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. So I've always been really passionate about um equality, gender equality in particular, and creating safe spaces for women to succeed in. Uh, and so when I was at university, I like ran for the women's officer. I got elected alongside someone else. So there were two of us. There was always two of us, which was very lucky. And we had the space on campus called Women's Space, which still exists at the University of Auckland. Essentially, a safe space for women on campus to go and rest, to relax, to study, to have their lunch, and to have conversations. And as part of that, in our office, we actually had free period products that were donated by a company at the time. And so anyone that needed a product could kind of come into our office and ask for one and grab one. At the time, we, for whatever reason, didn't have the common sense to just put them in the bathrooms to avoid the drama of someone having to come and ask us. But because of that, as they came in, they would often feel the need to justify themselves for taking a product. And in that, they would tell their story. So they would say things like, "Oh, I'm so grateful because I've had to pick between period products and food all week. So actually, I've just been staying home and skipping class because like I can't not eat all week, and I can't just like free bleed on campus. So I've just been staying home and skipping class, and like I'll just figure it out." Or they would say things like, like, "Oh, I've got an exam in an hour and I wasn't supposed to get my period and I don't know and it's happened and I'm freaking out. I don't know how I'm going to sit this exam now." And I think just those things really triggered for me that this is an issue that's happening. Again, as I say, I grew up really, really fortunate, and that's a challenge that I personally never had to face. I was lucky in that whenever I needed a period product, it was readily available either in my home or kind of wherever I was. And I started researching the problem and realized that more than half of the women in Aotearoa have struggled to afford a period product at some point in time in their life, which to me, in a country like this, is a staggering number. In whatever capacity that looks like as well, right? Like when you think of places that face like extreme forms of poverty or period poverty, you don't necessarily think of Aotearoa. You think of kind of, Asian countries, like you think of India, you think of, different places in Africa, for example. You don't think of New Zealand. And I think that's been one of the biggest failures on our part as a welfare state. Um, and a big part of that, as I started doing that research, was realizing that it's just because we never talked about it. You do talk about like you're in school and you bring a can of food to school and we donate that. We do gold coin donations. We talk about kids' education. At no point in time was I told to bring in a box of sanitary pads to school to donate to the Women's Refuge. And because of that lack of conversation is where this problem has existed. So I started getting really, really passionate about that as at my time during as my time during women's rights officer at Auckland Uni, but I didn't necessarily have a solution at that point. And slowly over time that crafted.
And the reason I asked the question is because all seeds are planted at some point, and then they grow at certain points if you water them. And I love the fact that you mentioned that the stories are what really gave you the plant of the seed. Because as you know, before we started recording, we mentioned that everybody has a story, and as you said, everyone that came in shares a story. And if we go back a little bit, if you had put out the pads in the bathrooms, you'd never have heard the stories. You might have a whole different conversation happening today. So it's the way life works out is really quite interesting, isn't it? If we
Yeah.
think of it, think of it that way there. So you finish up at university and then off you go and have an adventure with your working world. What is that like for you as you went to Unilever and then the UK and worked in those big corporate spaces?
I think those all helped me get to the point I am today. So after I finished university and even though I knew at some point I wanted to have my own business, the best path went was like, well, okay, well, I should get a grad program because that's what everyone around me was gearing for. So I ended up getting into a grad program at Unilever that was really, really competitive to get into. So I was like, well, it's competitive, so I should take it because I've gotten it. which is again that kind of the kind of mentality that I kind of had ingrained. And I ended up having, I'd say honestly, the best foundation to my career I could have asked for. Just the basic level of critical thinking, strategic thinking, like the level of discipline that you create in your work, how to have a conversation with someone, even when it's difficult, how to negotiate basic things, how to write an email that is structurally sound and is firm but kind. The basic things that actually till date have helped me so much in my career, I learnt there. And then I think through that, I had another opportunity come up with Zuru, which is a big startup here, running a brand called Monday Hair Care and launching that internationally. And in that experience, I was kind of thrown into conversations that probably a 22-year-old shouldn't be allowed to have, wouldn't at Unilever, you wouldn't be allowed to have till you were like 60, So I was negotiating with like senior directors at Walmart when I was like 22 and launching brands into Sweden and Mongolia and, countries that I didn't even know existed at the time. And that in itself, I mean, it taught me how to do that, but it also taught me that actually no ambition is too big. If I can go away and I can do this with someone else, if I can take, a brand that's just launched in New Zealand and turn it into a $100 million brand for someone else, I can do it for myself. And I think that's, I mean, outside of obviously I did take away a lot of the hard skills from that job, but outside of that, I think that's the biggest thing it unlocked for me is that it's okay to want more. And there are ways to get it. And I did that, and then I moved away to the UK before, which I'd kind of had like a brief stint in building ventures, and realized that, lo and behold, turns out I do love building startups. I just wasn't ready to do it for myself, so I went into corporate venture building and strategic consulting in the UK for a couple years, and built startups again and again and again for different companies. And that taught me how to go from like, you want to build the $100 million business. What does that mean? You should be doing it on Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday to try and get there. So it taught me how to take that big problem and digest it into really small, everyday, actionable bits that actually get you there. Because I think so many people have the ambition of like, I want to solve period poverty, but where do you start? So it taught me where to start. And I think with all of the combination of that career, when I came back to Aotearoa a year and a half ago, I was very much in the boat of, you know what, it's now or never. I feel like I have the passion remains. There's this problem that I haven't been able to get out of my head in a decade, that like, niggles at me all the time. I have a solution that I think might work that is worth a try. And I now feel like I have the experience base to give it a proper shot. So the culmination of those three things made it feel like this was the right time to try. And I think without my corporate experience, I wouldn't have that background and I wouldn't probably have the confidence at success that I feel today.
And that's so true. And for listeners out there, and for myself as well, what I loved there was about how you mentioned it's about the basics. When you get the basics right and you learn those correctly, they help you in every single day in life. You spoke about the way you have an email, the way you have a communication, but also the way you start building confidence in yourself with those conversations, whether you're 22 or 42 or 52, when you learn the basics and how to have that, it allows it to happen. But what I loved was how you realize that actually, hey, I'm doing this for other people, why can't I do it for myself? Because a lot of times, we do things for other people and then which we do really well. We can smash that. But then when we have our own self-belief, we're like, I don't know. I don't know. But you're like, hey, you've done it for somebody else. I was coaching a client last night, and the exact same conversation. She was crushing. She's crushing and doing some amazing stuff for her company. And she wants to do stuff for herself, and she just has no confidence. I'm like, but right now you are doing so well, and you're doing the exact same thing, but you're not doing it. And it's really the confidence. Sorry, she's doing it, but the confidence. It's really great to hear how you are like, actually, hey, let me switch the focus a little bit. And that niggling, that thing that you had there, which we all have all the time. So it's really beautiful. It's like the Simon Scribbs book, everyone has a dream. What step are you going to take to have the dream? That's It's really beautiful to hear that there. So you come back to New Zealand, and is this when the idea for the product started off, or was the idea? I mean, the idea was already there, but the naming and the actual actualization, did that come back when you came back to New Zealand?
Yeah, I mean, so the idea for the product came actually pretty quickly when I thought of the problem, and it basically happened where, I was passionate about period poverty, and there's a brand called I think Libra here, and on the back of their sanitary pads, on the sticker that you peel off at the release paper, it's called, they put fun facts. So they'd realize very quickly that when you're changing your period product, you're not doing anything else. You're not on your phone. You're not doing anything. Pe Most people are just reading those fun facts. So they'd chosen to capitalize that space to create more affinity with their brand. So I think reading that, I realized that actually, if I'm spending so much time reading these facts, and I know my friends are as well, because we joke about it or we talk about them, then there's space here that people are giving attention to. So many things are paid for by ads. Why can't this? So I think that's where the idea kind of sparked quite a while ago. But again, I kind of did nothing with it. I was like, oh, print advertising is so hard. Physical products are really hard. Like, should I just focus on, creating a consulting agency? Because that's what I know how to do. And I love helping other people build their businesses. So I could do that. Should I focus on something that requires less capital investment? And I did have a couple of people that I talked to kind of dissuade me in that process as well and say, look, like, physical products, particularly healthcare products, are so difficult. You're better off picking something else. So I had a couple of other ideas swimming in between. Um, but I think when I came back and I was like, cool, I've got three ideas that I think have legs. Which one am I going to pick? I did all the research behind all of them, the standard, like what you're supposed to do. I did like, here's the size of the prize for all three. Logic aside, this was the one where I was like, if there's something I can give my all to, it's this because this is what's been calling to me. And at the end of the day, if I walk away from this and I've made no money, I've lost everything, but I've helped even 10 people like go about their day or fulfill an opportunity because they've had access to something they didn't before, that in itself is a success. So I think in a weird way, for me, it was like the most conservative approach to protect myself from failure. Because if you've helped any person, then it's really hard to feel like a failure. Not that I don't. Some days, everyone does. But I think that's why when I came home, I knew I wanted to start my own business. I had a couple of, I have a thing in my notes app on my phone of like ridiculous business ideas that I might dream up or, write out. And I'd say 90% of them are pure trash, as they should be. Um, that's the one that really stuck out, and that's the one I doubled down into. And the name kind of just came organically. I can't remember quite when it did. Um, yeah, but I was just like, how would I explain this to someone in the easiest way possible? What am I doing? I'm putting ads on pads. And a lot of my best friends actually call me ads as well, which is like a nice nickname to my name, and it was my take on pads. So, in a narcissistic kind of way. It just fit, and I thought it would be a placeholder name, but it's actually built quite a bit of affinity around it, so I think it's sticking around.
And it's exactly what it says exactly what it's doing. Ads
Yeah.
on pads, exactly what it's saying. And just it just happens to be the first two initials of your name, which is
Yeah.
quite awesome. But what I really enjoyed about that was the fact that you spoke about this is more than just about making money. It's about the impact. Right at the start we spoke about, you said half of females in New Zealand really struggle to get period products. So even if you help 10 people, the impact that you have, the flow on impact is really, really massive. What is it like for you now to try and find people to start putting ads on the pads? How do those conversations go?
I think the conversations today, luckily, are a lot easier than they were a year ago. I
Yes.
think when I first started, that was the biggest challenge. And to be honest, it continues to be the biggest challenge is to get the right advertisers on board. Because, I mean, one thing was very clear from the get-go is that we weren't just going to let anyone advertise on it. You're catching people in what is a vulnerable moment, right? Like you're changing a period product. Often, if you've grabbed a free pad, there's a chance that you're the kind of person that can't afford one as well, or you're just caught off guard. The last thing you need to see is like an ad that's like diet pills or, like something that
Yeah.
has historically pulled women down. So the one hard line we set out for ourselves was we want to work with brands that we think can empower people with periods rather than prey on them. Um, and that also means things like we don't advertise things like alcohol, that would be really easy. Alcohol companies have so much money, like a rosé company would kill to
Yeah.
advertise to a bunch of women, and we've had those offers come in. I mean, it's hard to turn them down. It's hard as a new business to turn down money.
Yeah.
But I think if we stay true to our cause, then things will come. So early days, I'd say it was challenging. We had a lot of people be like, oh, well, there's no data, there's no case studies, no one does it. People advertise on a billboard. How do I know advertising on a pad is going to work? B, it's risky, for a brand. As much as we like to say we're kind of, progressive now and there is no stigma around periods, there is a very big and deep stigma in and around periods. And a lot of brands say, look, at the end of the day, we just don't know how our customers would react, And we've had conversations where people are like, well, I can't go and advertise on a sex toy next, can I? So it's just the the perception that people have of periods and of sexualizing them and making them feel like it's something that they can't associate their brands with, that I'd say it's taken some time to kind of dismantle. And it will continue to take time. We're very early in that process. A year on, I think things have turned, which I'm very grateful for. We had a couple of early supporters of the brand, which really, really helped. I'd say a couple of gear shifting ones for us were Breast Cancer Foundation, which was our first major partner. And I think to have, being a charity, but to also have a strong message to share on our packaging, being able to pull data and insights out of that campaign for them, and also them having a really credible name in the New Zealand space, meant that we were able to take that case study to other places, to charities, to government, to corporates as well, with a name that they'd heard before. So they were like, oh, if they're doing it, I mean, I kind of get it, but if they're doing it, then it must not be something that's too dodgy or risky. Similarly, then, I think early days, what I prioritized rather than revenue was building case studies in different industries because I wanted people to know that they could advertise things that weren't just traditionally for a woman on them. You're not just advertising other pads or like heating pads or, lipstick on them. We kind of picked quite deliberately that we would have a charity, we would have a healthcare proposition. We would have an ice cream, so that was Eat Kinda that we did, and we would have an app because we wanted very, very disparate things. So prioritizing early building case studies rather than revenue because our biggest problem was lack of data. That's meant that today, when someone says, well, I just don't know if this works or not, I've got like 20 case studies to be like, hey, here's proof it works. Um, and because now we've had a couple of those companies come on board, people are also a little bit insulated to the risk it might hold for their brands. Work in progress, I would say still. It's still a challenge to get the right brands on board, to get them on board long term as well, to work in our lead times. But it's a lot easier today than it was when we started.
And that's a real great story there to talk about how maybe sh people have started shifting in their thinking about periods, about how it's a normal thing that happens. But also what I love about your messaging is the core values. It's so easy just to put any message in, hey, the money is money, but it's not about that. It's about the principles that you have around your product and the bigger picture, which is about women's well-being, women's health, which is bigger than money, essentially. We all love money, but hey, there's also a bit more to that there. And I love how you said that the right people, the right value driven will come when they come. But what is it like for you as a young founder, that is a woman that is navigating the space here? We all know that the gender pay gap is massive. The number of female entrepreneurs is versus male entrepreneurs is so disparate. The number of CEOs, whenever I read Alexia Hill's comments about, the number of female CEOs versus males is just ridiculous. Um, so we throw that on there, we throw your gender, and then we throw the race that you're actually Indian as well. I'm putting those in because I know how hard it is. In one of those, but then you added the gender as well. It makes things could be harder, could be easier. What is that like for you navigating those spaces there, which are you as an identity?
I think it's a hard one to answer, right? Because it's not, look, I'm very lucky in that I've never faced that discrimination in an overt way, but most of us have. It's not overt, right? It's in the little things. It's it's not in the exclusion, it's in the lack of inclusion, if that
Yes.
makes sense. So it's the little ways. So it has been like, a lot of there's this like big like startup bro network kind of that's almost unsaid in a way where I don't fit in. Like, I'm not going to play footy with them. I'm not going to go to the rugby games with them. I'm not going to go golfing with them because it's just not something that I was ever like raised to do. So I don't have an interest or an ability to do it. And I think also as a woman, as a young Indian woman, I have about like 20 million responsibilities outside of my business as well. So unfortunately, I can't like on my 1 hour off from my business go and play golf with you to
Yep.
try and build that rapport. So I like there are the little things that you definitely notice that is that I don't feel as naturally well networked as some of my male counterparts. Um, I think outside of that as well, I think there's a bit because the topic I'm speaking about is so inherently female or dubbed as inherently female often people kind of close up in and around it. So the people I'm approaching more often than not are men because they are the decision makers at companies still. But most of the time, they'll want to kind of pass me on to a female colleague, even if that colleague has nothing to do with what they're doing. Where I'm like, no, you're the head of marketing. So you need to sign this off. And they're like, no, but my like there's a girl in my supply chain you should talk to because she's a girl.
Yeah.
So I think just the little dynamics of that, because we're tackling an issue where traditionally either now they're at the point where they're like, oh no, no, like I get it, it's not wrong, but like it's probably not the thing I should be talking about, right? Like you need someone more an expert in that area than me, where it's like you're a 40-year-old man, like you should know how a woman's body operates. Or if not, you should be willing to listen without, without having to create stigma around it. So I think those little things definitely happen. I think on the flip, what I've noticed as well is sometimes it's actually a real challenge getting across to women in a business as well, because for so long we've been the torchbearer of our own issues. So if I'm approaching a woman in a business and I want her to champion my cause, it's actually really difficult because she's already championing 10 different causes to do with women and she's already fighting that battle internally. For her to add another one is kind of like, then she's branding herself as the office feminist. So as much as you really want to get behind these things, we notice that people for their own reasons sometimes really, really struggle too, even if they believe in the cause. And I think those are some of the challenges that I've probably experienced. I mean, as a woman founder, but also inherently tackling a largely female issue. Um, that's been uniquely difficult. I will say it's gotten a lot better. Like I
Yeah.
think, it's not as overt as it used to be. I feel quite I'm lucky in that I am naturally quite an extroverted or confident person. So I'm actually very comfortable calling people out on it in a way that is more jovial than attacky. Like unfortunately, as a woman, there's a game you have to play. And I'm lucky that I've learned to play it because of the maybe the wealth of experience that my corporate past has given me. Um, but yeah, there is some slight nuance to it in that I'll never like it's really hard for me to be in the club, even though sometimes you get invited to it.
Yeah, and I asked that question because it's a reality that we face. People, at the start I spoke to you about, we see this, we see the fantastic news stories, we see all that there, and which is an amazing success to what you're doing. But the grind is still real. This grind is real. The challenges are real. You know, you are still a human being living your life. Being a founder is one, which is, as you said, is one part of your many facets that you do. And sometimes we forget about that when we just, wow, this sounds amazing, but actually there's a lot more behind the story there. So thank you for sharing that there. And what really sparked me there was the fact that you spoke about, when you live in when you're marginalized, whatever that marginalization is, whether you are a female, whether you're Maori, Pacifica, whatever, disabled, when you have all these values that you really strongly believe in, and you are the person that is voicing them, adding something else just adds more burden to that person there because they then, as you said before, we're humans and we just start labeling people incorrectly. We start labeling people, and sometimes people just go no because I feel like I just don't want this. I believe in it, but I actually can't have another something else on my shoulders because my shoulders are really, and it's thank you for raising that there because this is something that I obviously you don't think about, but because you go, oh, we'll just get it done. So thank you so much for that there. And I think for people listening as well, this is a clear reminder as well that hey, don't just delegate these things just because a person ticks a certain box and they can be the right person for it when they're already doing all the other things that you've already delegated to them. because they believe in it. That's a really great awareness point there. Thank you. What is it like for
Yeah,
you?
and
Sorry.
sorry, I think that it's a big reason as well. Like I wanted to share this that, a lot of people are like, oh, why don't you just like ask women that can afford it to donate products for women that can't? Like, why don't you just like do like a buy one, give one model? And a big, like, honestly, financially, that would make so much sense, right? Like it would make life a lot easier. And there are so many people that are willing to do that. Women are so generous and they want to help others. But my biggest issue with that is it puts the onus back onto women
Yeah.
for something they're already struggling with. So we always talk about like we're trying to fight period poverty, but more than that, we're trying to fight period inequity.
Yeah.
The fact that I have to shell out, like $30 to $50 a month that a male counterpart doesn't. Over the long term, that money adds up. Like if I'm investing $50 a month, what can that do instead? So if then again, I like the onus of looking after other women is placed solely back on me, all we're doing is just stretching that inequity further. So it's a big part of why that, like, even within our business model, that like delegation model doesn't make sense to us. It's like this is a business problem owned by the community. So the community and the business should solve it. We shouldn't put this entirely back onto one group just because they're closest to it. In the same way that, like, it's quite annoying that at every company I'm at, I get put on the like diversity and inclusion committee because I'm like the one brown girl there. Like it just doesn't make sense. So let's not add more onto the piles of people that are already dealing with the problem. I think there are ways to tackle that in a way that's more inclusive and other solutions to it.
Yeah, it's really funny you say that because I remember when the whole Black Lives Matter thing happened, and I remember of Les Mills, and I still remember how Les Mills were like, oh, from now on we're gonna have one person of color on our board and whatever. And I was like, whoa, why is it happening now all of a sudden just because you are taking a box? And I just remember one of my friends who is a person of color, and he was nominated into a board, and he declined it. And he was like, I've been trying to get on this board for years and years. I've been a trainer at Les Mills for 20 years or so,
Mm.
and nothing, zero. But then when this happens, now all of a sudden you want me to be. He's like, no, this is the most ridiculous thing because now you're just taking a tick box exercise. You're not getting me on because of my skill set, of my knowledge. And you make you think about how many times does that happen in life just because companies or people are just saying, hey, we just want representation. And a lot of people that have come on the podcast have always said, yeah, we put them to the table, but no one listens to us. We're just there, but no one listens to our voices. Yeah, so it's really beautiful that the way you've said that there. So thank you for that there. Um, yeah, it's always food for thought when we do these exercises here. Talking about food for thought and exercises, how did it feel like when when your product was at your alma mater at the University of Auckland when you were able to go back and go, hey, boom, here we are.
It felt really, really gratifying, to be honest, because I mean, obviously I went to the university, but also that's where the idea and the passion was born. Those were
Yes.
like, in a weird way, like that's where I heard the problem and that's where I wanted to fix it first. So prior to the University of Auckland, which we don't like, that was our big launch. Prior to that, we'd actually launched in a few smaller places as well, because again, building those case studies was really important. Even a University of Auckland, like I'm so grateful. They took a leap on a small new business, but even them, they needed some kind of like, hey, you've done this before. You're not going to provide us with like newspaper instead of pads, and you're not going to give us pads one month and not the next. So we'd kind of worked with, I was lucky. I reached out to a friend that owns a cafe, and he was kind of one of our first early supporters. And we stocked a local cafe. I paired it with a Pilates studio. Like had my brothers sit there at night putting ad stickers on top of pad packaging till like 2 in the morning. And then we just put them in the cafe and we used that to start building case studies and prove that actually like the Pilates studios was getting calls and customers because we put their advertising out there. And so those little things helped us get into the university. So when we finally did launch in the university, I think it was such a gratifying moment because every part of that university setup, like now I'm lucky that I have a few systems more automated. But every part of that was done with our hands. Like I had stayed up all night, like building ad slots onto dispensers, onto hundreds of dispensers with like tape and like cuts on my hands and stuff, to try and get it ready the university to launch. And I'd gone and I'd helped put them up in every single space, and I'd helped take photographs of them and checked every single room out that they were in to make sure they were in the right place, that they were stocked. So it felt so incredible because we were so deeply a part of that process, and there were spaces I knew. So I knew in like intuitively how many students would be able to access them, what moments it would help them in as well. And I think just how supportive that university was as well of me because I was an ex-student and because I was trying to solve a problem for their current students. Like, I think it would have been very easy for them to be like, oh, we're not sure. We'll just buy it from Countdown.
Yeah.
Obviously there was a strong commercial case for which, there was a business reason they did it too. But I think having those early supporters and early champions, and in turn, us taking the time to nurture those and prioritize those relationships, um, has felt so, so gratifying. Like, I think we're now lucky that we have a couple of stockists. We have a couple of universities and are opening up more. And I do like, I kind of oversee those, but I'm able to automate that process a little bit more. But with the University of Auckland, I almost all the time I'll hand deliver their orders. Still, I mean, part of it is because I'm in Auckland and I can do it, but the other part is because they supported us so well early on that I want to make sure that every single thing that they receive is always perfect. And it means that I get to have like a 2-minute chat with them every time I drop off the boxes, and talk about how we can make this and build this further.
That's so beautiful. And I love that it's, a full circle moment, but also the fact that shout out to the University of Auckland for supporting you along the way because they could so easily be like, oh, a cool idea, but actually no. So it's really, really awesome that that's come through. I think I'm going to change the focus of the conversation just a little bit. Your business is a big part of you, but how do you find time to relax? As you said before, as a founder, you do all these things here, plus you're as a young Indian person, you have lots of other commitments that you have to get into. What is your way of just living life away from the business?
Do you know what? I'm still learning that. I
Yeah.
don't is the honest answer. Like, I try and take time away, like conscious time away from work. Like, I think when I started the business, I was ending my night on like email and WhatsApp in bed. I was like I would wake up, and before I'd even opened my eyes, my fingers had opened my email on my phone. And then my eyes, that would be the first thing my eyes saw. And so I think those little things I've kind of like gotten rid of because that's just like that's not the life I want to lead. And if I'm doing that, I'm not going to last very long.
Yeah.
Doing this. Like, I'm not that person. I'm not the person that can work constantly without stopping for like 20 years to make this succeed. I'm gonna need some balance. But what I haven't learned yet is how to not feel guilty every second I'm not working. So that is probably something that I'm still in the process of. If someone has an answer, that would be probably really helpful. But I do try and find a balance. Like, my family's really good with that. My partner is really great as well in helping remind me that like a balance is healthy, and that because I do creative work, I need to take the break there so that I can be creative. And I kind of forced my hand this year a little bit, so we got a puppy. And so naturally that has taken up a lot of my time and energy. Like, you can't not tend to the puppy because you are working. You can't not take him for a walk. You can't not play with him in the garden. So because I've kind of forced my hand a little bit in that relax area. So little things definitely help, but I'd say it's a big work in process, like progress. It's one of the biggest things I'm trying to work on is like that balance between like working too much and then like not working and then feeling like existentially guilty about the fact that I haven't done anything that's like shifted the needle in like 24 hours, you know? So I don't know, I guess is the answer.
Yeah, and that's a great thing because that's the honest truth. This is essentially a baby that you are building and you are creating, and it's natural for us to go, hey, if I'm not looking after inverted commas my baby, which is the business, what's going on there? But I love the fact that when you have a puppy and the puppy doesn't actually care, the puppy's
Yeah.
like, hey, you come and play, otherwise, so it's really awesome how you've forced your hand in a way, and it is a um it's something that just happens with progress and time. But the awareness is really beautiful that you have that awareness piece there, which is fantastic. Um, yeah, I say that because I'm the same. I'm super guilty of that there. Super guilty of. I need to be on my computer. I need to be posting on LinkedIn. I need to be posting on this. I need to be doing that there. But actually, you don't have to. You don't have to, or if you want to. So no, thank you for sharing that there, Aditi. And as you sit here and you think about where you are today, what is it like for you when you start seeing your name and you start getting called up by RNZ and you have all these interviews coming through about something that's been, to think back to what you said before, this is the stories you heard when you're in the University of Auckland. It is the period inequity that you're seeing, but now it's becoming mainstream with the conversation. Whereas 10 years ago, the word period and mainstream would not happen. How does it feel like for you when you're being called to speak about this?
I think I'm really, really excited about it. I think less because like I mean, a part of it is really exciting that a business that I've built gets to talk about these things in front of a lot of people. But it's more, it's what you said. It's like it's kind of like the glee of talking about something that's been taboo for so long, in such a public setting. Like, yeah, talking about periods on the radio, talking about periods on the TV, like talking about them so openly on LinkedIn, like a place where people don't talk about those things. That I think in a way it's like I get a lot of glee out of pushing the boundaries. And that's been really, really exciting because the more I do this, the more other people do this. We talk about periods, we talk about things that we're not supposed to in these public forums, the more that the next generation of women is accustomed to hearing it and open to talking about it. So I think that in itself is really exciting. But I think with that, I think there's the flip as well. Like there's been so many moments like, earlier this year we were supposed to have a television interview that was like kind of all scheduled, and then I get a message saying, actually, do you know what? We've rethought it, and this doesn't feel like the kind of thing that we should be discussing kind of in the morning. So it's like the little things. There's the flip of it that happens as well. And I think again, as an early founder, as a solo founder, I'm trying really hard not to, but I'm so focused on the things that don't happen rather than the things that do. So I'm not able to always recognize the wins of like, oh my God, it's so amazing that we got a chance to talk on RNZ, because I'm also thinking about the fact that like, oh my God, what could I have done differently that we could have gotten a chance to speak at this thing as well and make the message even bigger. So I guess that's another balancing act I'm learning is like is letting it take its time, because I can do everything I can to accelerate that process, but some things just take time.
I love it because it's quite funny. It goes back to what I said at the start, to choose your hard. You choose your hard whether you want to choose the fact that you dwell on the negative, or you choose your hard to celebrate the success. And as humans, what do? We always focus on the negative. This is just what we do. Oh,
Yeah.
what I should have done that. I should have done that. And we just, that energy just goes. So I thank you for sharing that there, which is, it's the truth. With every success, there's so many other failures that come along the way. And as humans, we focus on those failures. Just inherently, that's what we do. I think we've been speaking for almost an hour, and time has just flown, and there's so much in your story which we could get into. But I know time is precious, and it is a public holiday, and your puppy might be waiting for you. So I'm going to ask you our final question, unless there's something else you'd like to add, which I haven't covered, because there might be something else that you might actually. This is pretty cool. Is there anything else that I haven't covered that you thought we'd like to share?
No, I mean, I guess I'd just love to ask you about like your experience in and around periods. Like, when was the
Yeah.
first time you kind of like learnt what that was? What was that like growing up for you? Who taught you about them, if at all? And what does your like how comfortable has this episode been for you? Like, how comfortable do you feel talking about it? Because there's no, like that's the thing that we're trying to do as well. Like, just because we want to talk about periods and we want to yell at them, yell about them from the rooftops doesn't mean we're angry at the people that can't yet. And I think that's the one thing we're trying to create with our brand, is that this is an open, safe space to talk about the things you've never been allowed to talk about, and therefore it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, what a great question. I love that because so I'll talk. So I grew up in Zimbabwe, grew up in
Yeah.
Africa. And in Zimbabwe, it was way easier to talk about sex than it was to talk about the period. So going through school, because when I was growing up, HIV/AIDS was a massive pandemic in Zimbabwe. So in every school lesson, health lessons, you talk about sex, you talk about how to put on a condom, you talk about safe sex or no sex, essentially ABC, abstain, and Abstains. We had this ABC thing which I can't remember. Obviously, it was so well trained and I forgot. But nobody ever talked about periods. And here's a crazy thing, because I went to a co-ed school, a co-ed primary school, that was not mentioned. So, and I grew up in a family of three boys. So just my mum, my dad, three boys. So talking about a period was not at all in the conversation. That was not even a thing. And oblivious, because then you go to high school, and in Africa, when I was growing up, there was no co-ed schools. You just went to all boys school. So the fact that you talk about that didn't happen, that was not a thing. Did not even know about it. Yes, you learn about it in biology class, but that's about it. You learn about the menstrual cycle, the thickening and the uterus. You just learn the biology, but you don't learn about the reality of what actually happened. So oblivious. The first time I remember this, the first time I was like, what is going on here, was when I went to university in South Africa, and I would go to the temple or to the mandir on Sundays, and I would go with a couple of friends, and then one day one of my friends was like, I can't come to the mandir, and I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, no, I actually can't come to the mandir. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, why can't you come to the mandir? Why are you being so weird about it? And she was like, I can't come to the mandir. And I was like, what? I was like, hey, whatever. What's up with that? And then later on, they were like, it's because I'm on my period. And I didn't realize that when you're period, you can't go to the mandir. And that's when I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Because I didn't know about it. So I was being really uneducated, but being really like, what are you doing? And that was my first introduction to the world of the period, you know? But again, it was really uncomfortable because I was like, how do I talk about this now? This is so strange for me at that point in time. And just being real, I was like, oh, now what do I do? Then it became really awkward for me whenever it was the Mandir time. I was like, oh, are they coming? Are they not coming? What do I say? It was like really interesting. So that's when I started thinking about it. And then my friends were really awesome. They educated about me all, especially in traditional Indian culture. Talking about this is really taboo. People don't talk about it at all. It's not a thing that you talk about. You're just told what you can't do, not what you can do. You can't do that there. The word dirty always comes to play. Oh, you can't do that because it's a bit dirty or whatever. Like, oh, this is strange. At that time, I didn't think too much about it. Um, and then it's only when I moved to New Zealand and I was working in a hall of residence, that's when I realized the impact. And it was really quite strange, because this is when I was like, this is really crazy. Because in those times in the hall of residences, people they put up big bottles of free condoms. And I was like, but what about free tampons? I asked a question, and they were like, what are you talking about? We don't do that there. Because that was when I realized there was this is so weird. Why are we putting out all these? It's easy to have sex, safe sex, but what about the fact that females are every month, you're going through a period, whether it's a tampon or pad or whatever. And at that point, they're like, oh, shut down pretty quickly. Like, just don't talk about that. And I just forgot about it. But the more I started working with all sorts of people, I started getting educated. So the conversation about periods it's now become really easy for me. I will, when I manage a team, and this is really funny. I started working in October last year, and I have most of my team is females. And in my one-on-ones, my first one-on-ones to them, I said to them, "Hey, when you're having your period, just let me know, so I know what I can do to support you." And they were like, "Prajesh, what did you just say?" And I was like, "I'm being honest with you." And they're like, "But you can't say that." And I was like, "What can I say?" I was like, "I understand that when you're going through your periods, things are different for you, and if you just let me know, then I know what I can do as a manager." And they were like, "No one has ever said that to us before." And I was like, "Well." Let's be real here. But that all come through my learning through time, working with the really amazing female mentors that have just told me straight up that, hey, this is what's happened in our lives. So you better just cool it. The way you talk to us, you better watch the way you talk to us in that times. And those were my teachers, I guess, because I don't know. I'm a male. I don't know. However, one of my colleagues says this quote to me, Julie. It's not your fault if you don't know, but it is your responsibility when you do know. And that has shifted the way I've thought about, most of the things that are not in my wheelhouse. Once I know, if I'm not enabling or helping, then I'm just as well. So back to your question, if you asked me this question 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, yeah, actually, this conversation won't happen because I'd be feeling so weird to talk about it. People are like, oh, what are you talking about? But fast forward 10 years through life experiences, through talking to people like yourself and other people, it just becomes, it's a normal thing because it's biology, you know? So yeah, thank you for asking the question. Hopefully that helped you.
Yeah, no, of course. And yeah, like the experience you talked about is so familiar to me. It's so common. It's honestly largely similar to the way I would have grown up as
Yeah.
well. So I've actually seen a lot of the people in my life go on that journey, like including my father and my brothers, that kind of thing that, aren't would never have spoken about these things, or would never know what to talk about here. So I think that that experience is very familiar, and I'm so grateful that more men are choosing to go on that journey. And it's part of what we're trying to do as well is help them go on that journey without feeling, ridiculed for not knowing. Because there's so much about periods that even people that have them don't know because the research hasn't been done. The information just isn't there. No one's ever talked about it. So it's really, really difficult to learn about it unless you really go out of your way to. So it's giving, helping each other have more cause to go out of our way to learn about these things because it affects so deeply the people in your life.
Yeah, and I gotta put a shout out to you because when you put posts on LinkedIn and stuff, when I look at them, I learn. I'm just learning from me. I was like, oh, you don't know what you don't know. And when people like yourself and anyone in those spaces where you don't know it, I could quite easily just unfollow you and be like, oh, this is not my world. But the fact that you put that out there is it's a learning post. So I need to hear you and thank you for doing that there because I can imagine there's lots of haters out there that are going, what are you doing? But there's also a lot more people out there that are going, thank you for posting that there because I didn't know about there. And the languaging, I always think about languaging when you don't know what words to use. When people put out stuff, you go, oh, I can now use the languaging because I understand it.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Yeah, that's the goal. And it's a good push as well because I barely ever post anymore. So it's a good push to get back on there.
Yeah, it's because like you said right at the start, even if one person reads your post or one person's life is changed by your paths, that's one person, but the ripple effect is massive. It's one person, but their whole circle has changed.
Yeah.
Yes, so thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
No worries. That was a very profound question, so thank you for asking that question there. And as we round up, Aditi, we have a tradition with this podcast to ask our guests a final question. And our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge. And every week we ask our guests to share a piece of knowledge to put into our basket. And you've shared lots today, but is there any particular piece of knowledge that you go, hey, this piece of knowledge is pretty something that's helped me in my world?
I think the one like this is so I mentioned that my family comes from a business background. And one of the things that my dad says quite a bit is I'll translate it as well. He's basically say he's like paisa no kam paisa j kari sake. So means that only money can do money's job.
Mhm.
And I think so often when people are starting for purpose businesses or social enterprises or charities, they're so drawn towards solving the problem that they forget or feel almost guilty about looking into profit. But at the end of the day, only money can solve what money is meant to do. And a big part of what we talk about as a social enterprise is the fact that we are a business. Like we are not a charity. We've had people come and try to donate to us and we don't take it. And so often like businesses have been like, oh, we'd work with you if you were a charity. But the difference is that we know that New Zealand has more charities per capita than any country in the world. And we know that they're all fighting for the same pot of money. And we know that when there's an economic downturn, people stop donating to those charities. So in order to become self-funding and sufficient and actually solve the problem in a scalable way, money is so, so important. In order to keep founders motivated towards solving social problems, money is so, so important because naturally we're people that are ambitious and want things out of our lives, and we could be doing high-paying corporate jobs instead. Um, so I think that's the one like piece of knowledge that I try to share so often. It's but particularly with women is just because your job is to help people doesn't mean that doesn't mean that profit is a dirty word or that those profit and purpose can't come together. they can live together, and more often than not, when it's a woman running the business, they can actually help each other as well. So yeah, I guess that's the one piece that I hope someone that's thinking about solving a social problem is able to take away.
And that's so, so true. And I love that because the other day I was on a podcast and somebody asked me about the government and blah blah blah. And I was like, hey, let's forget about that for a second. I said money is important because money might not buy you, like Simon Sinek said, money might not buy you happiness, but it's going to buy you options.
Mhm.
And as you said before, yes, you got to have money to make money. It's as simple as that. So I love that. Kudos to your dad for that fantastic Gujarati quote. Oh,
Yeah.
Hindu quote. This is really beautiful. Thank you, Aditi, for that, and thank you for sharing your story today. Any last words before we sign off?
No, I mean, thank you so, so much for having me and for sharing your story and your journey as well. I know it's not always easy to talk about your experience, particularly when, it paints us in a more ignorant light than we are today. As well. So thank you so much for sharing that and for having me. And yeah, and if anyone would like to come on board and support us, give us feedback, share their story with us as well, you can always find us at Ads on Pads on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on TikTok as well. So just flick us a DM, and we love to hear from people in whatever capacity.
Man, so all our listeners out there, I challenge you to send Aditi a message on any of those platforms there because, we're all learning and we're all caring, all here to help people in different ways. So thank you so much. And we'll put all those links in the show notes as well so you can get in touch with this awesome, awesome um, for-profit organization, social enterprise.
Yeah.
Aditi, thank you so much for listeners out there. Thank you for jumping on. It's been a real pleasure listening to and talking to Aditi today. Um, my challenge for you all, a second challenge as well, is don't forget to keep smiling. Don't forget to find something that makes you happy. And most important of all, don't forget to put something into your basket of knowledge. Till next time, ka kite. Bye, everybody. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge. Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.